There is a kind of room the show keeps returning to, and it does not have a name. It is whatever space is left when the music stops. Picture a doorway you have walked past 100 times without going in. The light on the other side is low. Something is in there, sitting very still, and it has been waiting for you to be quiet enough to notice it. Come in. Do not turn on the light. Leave your shoes at the threshold, and let your eyes adjust the way they do when you are almost asleep. This is the room where Adventure Time keeps the things it could not say out loud, and tonight, slowly, one at a time, we are going to sit in it together. Here is the thing about this show that took years for people to articulate. Adventure Time does not break your heart by showing you sad things. Plenty of shows show you sad things. They cue the strings, they hold on the trembling lip, they tell you in a dozen small ways exactly how much you are supposed to feel and when. Adventure Time does the opposite. When the moment that should hurt arrives, the show takes the comfort away. It removes the score. It refuses to explain what just happened. It holds a static shot for 3 seconds longer than is comfortable and trusts you, alone in the dark, to feel the thing it will not name for you. The heartbreak is not in the event. The heartbreak is in the withholding. It is in everything the show chooses not to give you at the exact moment you need it most. That distinction matters more than it might seem at first. Most television treats an emotional scene as a transaction. The show provides the feeling, fully assembled, and the viewer receives it. The music tells you this is sad. The close-up tells you this is important. The dialogue says the quiet part out loud so that nobody in the audience can miss it. There is nothing wrong with that, exactly. But it asks very little of you. You are a passenger. Adventure Time, at its best, does not let you be a passenger. It builds the moment, and then, right at the edge of it, it steps back and leaves a space, and it waits for you to walk into the space yourself. What you bring into that space is your own. That is why these episodes feel less like things you watched, and more like things that happened to you. There is a reason this technique works so powerfully on a show about a boy and a magic dog, and it has to do with the gap between the surface and the depth. Adventure Time looks, at a glance, like pure sugar. Bright colors, silly voices, candy people, fart jokes, a hero who shouts and swings a sword. The whole visual language of the show promises that nothing here will hurt you. That this is a safe and goofy place where the worst thing that happens is a comic defeat. And the show uses that promise as cover. It lets you relax inside the brightness. And then, in the quiet moments, it removes the brightness, takes away the music and the jokes and the color of the tone, and shows you something true and hard in the sudden absence. The withholding lands so much harder because of everything the show usually gives you. When a show that is always loud goes silent, the silence is deafening. When a show built on comfort takes the comfort away, the absence is a wound. The candy coating is not a contradiction of the grief. It is the delivery system for it. And it matters, for tonight especially, that this is sleep content. That you are listening to this in the dark, probably with your eyes closed, drifting, because the show's whole method is built for exactly this state. It does not want you alert and analyzing. It wants you receptive, soft, in the half place between waking and sleep, where feelings move more freely and the defenses are down. The held silence after a loss is not something to study. It is something to sink into. The image the show refuses to explain is not a puzzle to solve but a space to rest your own grief in. So as we move through these 14 rooms tonight, do not work at them. Let them arrive. The show was always designed to reach people exactly where you are right now, almost asleep, undefended, willing to feel the thing it will not name. That was the point all along. That is the lens for tonight. Welcome to Tome. We are going to walk through 14 episodes, in order, from the gentlest ache to the deepest devastation, and out the other side into something that finally feels like comfort. Each one is a complete story, a small closed room of grief, and in each one we are going to find the specific thing the show withholds. The music it does not play, the cut it does not soften, the silence it lets run long, the line it leaves unsaid. We are not going to rush any of them. The whole point of the way this show works is that it slows down at the moments other shows speed up, and so will we. Get comfortable. This one goes deep, and it goes slow on purpose. Let us get into it. Tree Trunks is a tiny green elephant in an apron, and she wants an apple. Not any apple. The crystal apple, the perfect one, growing at the heart of the evil forest, where the giant antlions and the monstrous flora live. This is Season 1, Episode 4. It aired on April 26th, 2010, only a few weeks into the entire series, before the show had any reputation at all for being able to hurt you. And that is exactly why it works the way it does. Nobody watching the 4th episode of a Cartoon Network adventure comedy expects to lose anyone. The show had not yet earned your guard, which means it could get past it. The story is built like a fairy tale, and it knows it. Finn and Jake escort Tree Trunks into the forest because she is small and sweet and stubborn, and they love her, and they cannot talk her out of the quest. They fight off the dangers. They clear the path. They treat the whole thing as a charming little errand for a charming little creature. And the entire time, Finn keeps trying to convince her to turn back, because the place is plainly too dangerous for a tiny elephant in an apron who bakes pies. She refuses. She wants the apple. There is a hunger in her that the episode never fully explains. A desire for the one perfect thing at the center of the dangerous place. And the show lets that desire pull her forward past every warning Finn gives her. Pay attention to how the tone is managed in these middle minutes, because the management is the trap. The dangers are played for adventure, not dread. The monsters are obstacles to overcome, the kind Finn and Jake clear a dozen times an episode. The music underneath is light and questing. Everything in the construction of the scene tells you that this is a romp, a small quest, with a sweet payoff at the end, and you settle into that expectation completely. The show wants you comfortable. It wants you to believe you know what kind of episode this is, because the only way the ending can do what it does is if you are not braced for it. And then she reaches it. She climbs out onto the branch. She takes the crystal apple in her trunk. And the moment she does, the whole structure collapses, a beast erupts, and Tree Trunks is gone in a flash of light, vanished, eaten or transported or destroyed. The show does not say which. Finn screams her name. And then the scene ends. Consider what the show does here in its 4th episode, when it has every option available to it. It could bring her back in the next 30 seconds. It could play the moment for a laugh, reveal she is fine, restore the comfortable tone it spent the episode establishing. Instead, it cuts to Finn and Jake at home, in the dim tree fort, sitting in the kind of stunned quiet that follows a real loss. The comedy engine of the show simply switches off. Nobody makes a joke. The two of them sit there, and the room is dark, and the lightness is gone as if it had never been there at all. Watch what is missing in that final stretch. There is no triumphant music to tell you it will be alright. There is no flashback montage to make sure you feel the grief in the approved way. There is no comforting line from Jake, no reassurance that they will find her, no promise of a rescue mission. There is just Finn, who could not save her, sitting with the fact that he could not save her, in a room that has gone quiet around him. The episode lets that sit. It holds on the stillness. For a show that had so far been almost entirely about energy and motion and noise. This sudden stop is itself the statement. The absence of all the things that would normally be there is the whole point. And then it does the strangest thing of all. It cuts away to Tree Trunks, alive, in a strange new dimension, being crowned and pampered, perfectly content, with absolutely no awareness that anyone is mourning her back home. She is fine. She is happy. She has wandered into a kind of paradise, and she does not spare a thought for the boy who tried to protect her, because as far as she is concerned, nothing bad has happened. She got her apple. She found a wonderful place. The two halves of the story, the grief and the contentment, exist side by side and never touch. That is the withholding. And it is the founding example of everything this show would later become famous for. The show could have given Finn and Jake the relief of knowing she survived. It refuses. They do not find out. Not in this episode. The audience knows she is alive, but the characters who loved her are left inside their grief with no resolution. And the show simply ends on the gap between what we know and what they will never learn. This needs to be stated plainly. The very first time Adventure Time decided to make you feel something deep, it did it by separating the comfort of the truth from the people who needed it. The grief and the relief exist in two different rooms, and the show locks the door between them. For a fourth episode, that is an astonishingly cold and confident choice, and it is the whole template for everything that follows. And look closely at the specific object of Tree Trunks' desire, because the show chose it carefully. She does not die for treasure or glory or to save anyone. She vanishes reaching for the single most perfect apple, the crystal apple at the center of the dangerous place, a thing of pure beauty with no use beyond being perfect. The episode does not condemn her for the wanting. It does not turn her quest into a cautionary tale about greed or recklessness. It simply lets a small, sweet creature be destroyed in the act of reaching for something beautiful, and it declines to assign a moral to that. Declines to tell you whether the apple was worth it, or whether she was foolish to want it. The show withholds the lesson. It just shows you that wanting the perfect thing can cost you everything, and it leaves the judgment of whether that is tragic or noble entirely up to you, the way it will leave nearly every judgment up to you for the next 10 years. And the final cut, away from Finn's grief to Tree Trunks' contentment, does something to the architecture of the whole series that only becomes clear in retrospect. It establishes, in episode 4, that this is a show in which characters can be gone from each other while still existing, in which loss and survival are not opposites, in which someone can be perfectly alive in one place and perfectly mourned in another, and the two facts never reconcile. That idea will return again and again. Simon will be alive and lost to Marceline at the same time. Martin will be alive and gone to Finn. The whole show runs on the gap between being and being present, and Tree Trunks is where the show first quietly drew that line. In what looked like a sweet little adventure about an elephant and an apple. Susan Strong does not speak. That is the first thing to understand about her, and it is the thing the episode is built around. Season 2, Episode 18, aired March 7th, 2011. Finn discovers a tribe of hooded people living underground, hiding from the surface, terrified of the open sky, and among them is a tall, powerful woman he names Susan Strong. He becomes convinced she might be a human, like him, the first one he has ever met, and that conviction is the engine of his hope for the entire episode. You have to understand how much that hope weighs to understand why the episode aches the way it does. Finn is, as far as he knows, the last human in Ooo. He has been raised by a family of dogs, loved completely, never neglected, and yet there is a specific loneliness that no amount of love from another species can touch. He is a category of one. There is no one else who is what he is. And then he finds an underground tribe of people who walk on two legs and wear clothes and hide from the world, and among them is a woman who looks like she might, just might, be the same kind of creature he is. The episode is not about a monster of the week. It is about a boy meeting, for the first time in his life, the possibility that he is not alone in the most fundamental way a person can be alone. Here is what the show withholds, and it withholds it for the entire run of the series, not just this episode. It never tells you what Susan is. Finn wants her to be human so badly. He teaches her words. He coaxes her toward the surface. He brings her up into the sunlight and shows her the world, patient and gentle, the way you would teach a child or welcome a stranger. And the episode dangles the answer in front of both of them and then pulls it away. At the climax, when her people are in danger, Susan does something that hints at a deeper truth, and her hood comes loose. And there is the suggestion of something that is not quite human underneath, something mechanical or other, and the moment passes without confirmation. The show shows you just enough to raise the question, and not nearly enough to answer it. Think about what that actually means for Finn. He projects belonging onto a person who cannot tell him whether the belonging is real. Susan cannot speak. She cannot say, "I am like you," or "I am not." She can only cling to him, follow him, mimic his sounds, reach for a connection she has no language to name. And Finn reaches back, filling her silence with the answer he needs to be true. The episode is about a boy so lonely that he builds a family out of a question mark, and the show will not give him the period at the end of the sentence. The hope and the doubt have to coexist forever because the show refuses to resolve either one. The behavioral read is everything here, because neither character can explain themselves in words. You watch what Susan does. She protects her people. She follows Finn toward a sky she is afraid of, because he asked her to, and that act of following is itself a kind of love, the trust of a creature who has decided this one person is safe. She makes a sound at the end that is almost a word, and is not quite one. And the show holds on that, on the near word, on the reaching that does not arrive. It does not score the moment to tell you it is sad. It just lets you sit with a person trying to cross a distance she does not have the tools to cross, and a boy on the other side who wants her there more than he can say. And the show makes the withholding part of the world itself, not just this one scene. Susan reappears across the series, and the question never closes the way you keep expecting it to. The mystery of what she is becomes a permanent feature of her character, a hood that is never fully removed, and the relationship between her and Finn stays built on that uncertainty. The heartbreak of Susan Strong is the heartbreak of two people who cannot quite reach each other in an episode and a show that refuses to close the gap for them. Finn found someone who might be like him, and the most the show will ever let him have is the might. And the fear of the sky is the detail that turns the episode from a curiosity into a quiet tragedy, because it is the show's image for what the world does to the people who hide from it. Susan's people live underground because the surface terrified them into burrowing away from it, and Susan herself has to be coaxed, gently, patiently, toward a sky she has every reason to fear. Finn is asking her to do the bravest thing a frightened creature can do, to come up into the open, to trust that the world is not only the thing that drove her into the dark, and she does it, for him, which is the love of the episode laid bare. But the show never lets you forget what that trust costs her, never pretends the sky is safe just because Finn believes it is, and it withholds any guarantee that her bravery will be rewarded. She comes up into the light because a boy she cannot fully understand asked her to, and the show holds on that act of trust without promising it will not break her heart. And there is one more layer to the withholding that only becomes visible across time, which is that the show makes Finn into the person who decides what Susan is. He is the one who names her. He is the one who insists she is human, who teaches her, who treats her as the answer to his loneliness. The tribe never told him she was human. The evidence never confirmed it. The category exists almost entirely because Finn needed it to exist, and the show, by refusing to give an objective answer, places the whole weight of the question on his hope rather than on any fact. That is a gentle and unusual cruelty. It does not just deny Finn the answer. It quietly reveals that the answer was always his own projection, that the belonging he found was something he brought with him rather than something he discovered, and it leaves him, and you, to wonder how much of any belonging works exactly the same way. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Memory of a Memory takes you inside Marceline's mind, and the cruelty of what it finds there is delivered as a casual aside. Season 3, Episode 3, aired July 25th, 2011. The premise is a trick. Finn and Jake are shrunk down and sent diving through the layers of a sleeping mind, navigating memory after memory. And for most of the episode, the framing is a video game adventure, light and quick. There are levels. There is an antagonist guiding them with his own agenda. The whole thing has the texture of a game, a romp through someone's recollections, and the show is setting you up exactly the way Tree Trunks set you up. It is letting you settle into the comedy of the conceit so that the thing at the bottom can land without padding and without warning. At the deepest layer, they find a memory of Marceline as a small child. The world after the war is a ruin. She is alone with her father, Hunson Abadir, the demon who rules the Nightosphere, and she has found something to eat. Fries, a small paper container of fries, the kind of nothing treasure a hungry child clings to in a world where food is scarce and comfort is scarcer. And her father eats them. He eats her fries. And little Marceline cries, not the cry of a spoiled child who lost a treat, but the cry of a child who has just learned something about the person she loves most in the world. Something she will spend the rest of her very long life unable to unlearn. Here is the withholding, and it is brutal in its economy. The show does not explain the war. It does not explain the ruined world, or how a demon king and his half-demon daughter ended up scavenging in it, or why a grown man with an entire kingdom would take food from a starving little girl. It gives you no context, No backstory, no narration to soften the blow or to frame it as part of a larger arc you will understand later. It just shows you a small child crying over fries while her father walks away, and it trusts you to understand, with no help at all, that this is the foundational wound of one of the show's central characters. Everything cool and guarded about adult Marceline starts here, in this unexplained moment, and the show never once stops to connect the dots for you. And the staging makes it worse, in the best way. This is not even the main event of the episode. It is a memory found at the bottom of a stack of other memories, discovered almost by accident, surrounded by the comic machinery of the dream diving plot. The show buries its most devastating revelation about Marceline at the very bottom of an episode that is, on its surface, about something else entirely. You have to go down through the silly to find it. That placement is itself a kind of withholding. The show will not put the wound at the center where you cannot miss it. It hides it at the bottom and lets you stumble onto it, and the stumbling is part of why it lands so hard. And then it makes the wound permanent in a way that is almost unbearable to think about. The song the child sings, the small heartbroken song about her father and the fries, the song her father provoked by his carelessness, becomes the foundation of who she is as an artist. Her pain is the source material. The thing that broke her is the thing she will make music out of for 1,000 years. The episode does not say any of this. It simply plants the fries and the crying child at the bottom of her mind, and lets you carry the implication out with you. That is not a small thing. The show buried the origin of Marceline's entire emotional architecture inside a throwaway gag about stolen snacks, and it refused to underline a single word of it. You either feel it, or you do not, and the show is fine either way, because it is not performing the grief for you. It is just letting it be there. And the mechanics of the episode add a final turn of the knife that is easy to overlook because of how the plot is framed. Finn and Jake are not simply touring Marceline's memories. They have been sent in by a figure with his own agenda, a guide who wants something from the journey, and the deepest memory, the fries, is something they reach by intruding, by going where they were never invited. They are trespassing in the most private wound of someone they love, witnessing the foundational pain of a friend who never chose to show it to them. And the show does not make a moral occasion of that intrusion. It does not have Finn turn to the camera and reflect on the violation. It just lets them stumble into the most vulnerable thing about Marceline, and then carries them back out. And it leaves the discomfort of that trespass sitting in you, the sense that you too have just seen something you were not meant to see. What lingers most is the disproportion, the gap between the size of the trigger and the size of the wound. A father eats his daughter's fries. Stated flatly, it is almost nothing, a small thoughtless act, the kind of thing that happens in families every day. And it breaks her, permanently, because of everything around it, the ruined world, the scarcity, the fact that the fries were the one small good thing she had, and that the person who took them was the person who was supposed to protect her. The show understands that grief does not scale to the size of its cause, that the smallest acts can carry the heaviest meaning when they arrive at the wrong moment from the wrong person. And it refuses to explain any of that context, refuses to tell you why the fries matter so much, because explaining it would shrink it. It just shows you the disproportion, and trusts you to understand, from your own life, how a tiny thing can be the thing that breaks a heart. Goliad is the episode where Finn becomes a father and loses a son in the same 22 minutes, and the show never frames it that way, which is exactly why it hurts. Season 4, Episode 10. Aired June 4th, 2012. Princess Bubblegum creates Goliad, a sphinx-like candy creature meant to be her heir, a being who will rule the Candy Kingdom after she is gone, because Bubblegum, who is functionally immortal in her own way, is troubled by the question of what happens to her people when she is no longer there to govern them. Goliad is her answer, a successor, grown in a lab, taught to lead. But Goliad learns the wrong lessons. She watches Bubblegum manage the kingdom, and she absorbs the worst of it, the control, the dominance, the idea that ruling means bending other minds to your will. She develops psychic powers, the ability to reach into the heads of the candy people and command them directly, and she becomes a threat to everyone. A child raised into a tyrant by watching the world too closely and loving it too little. The horror of Goliad is the horror of a creature that was supposed to be the future and turned out to be a nightmare, And the responsibility for that lands squarely on the people who made her, without thinking hard enough about what they were teaching. So Bubblegum and Finn make a counter. They take Finn's Dina and Bubblegum's craft, and they create Stormo, a second Sphinx creature, born specifically to stop Goliad. Stormo carries Finn's nature instead of Bubblegum's, the protective instinct, the refusal to dominate, the willingness to put himself between danger and the people he is meant to guard. And Stormo does exactly what he was made to do. The two psychic beings lock into a mental battle, will against will, neither able to overpower the other, and the only way to contain the threat Goliad represents is for Stormo to hold her there, mind to mind, indefinitely. The episode ends with the two of them frozen on a mountaintop, locked in an eternal stalemate, a battle of pure will that can never be won and can never end. Sit with what that is. Stormo is, in a real and direct sense, Finn's son. He carries Finn's genetic material, his temperament, his instinct to shield. And he was born for one purpose, to give up his entire existence to a frozen, conscious, endless act of holding the line. He will never have a life. He will never play, never grow, never fly anywhere. Never be anything other than the thing that keeps a worse thing from happening. He spends the whole of his existence, all of forever, in a stalemate on a mountain, awake, aware, straining against an equal force for eternity. And Finn just walks away, because there is nothing else to be done, because the alternative is letting Goliad loose on the world. And so the only good option is to leave his own son frozen up there and go home. The show withholds the grief entirely, and that withholding is the most sophisticated thing in the episode. There is no funeral for Stormo, because Stormo is not dead. There is no mourning ritual, no eulogy, because how do you mourn something that is still there, still conscious, still locked in the act of saving you? The episode does not give Finn a tearful goodbye. It does not give the audience a moment of catharsis or even a clear label for what just happened. It just shows you two creatures frozen forever on a mountaintop and moves on, leaving you to realize, slowly, on your own, what was actually sacrificed and who actually made the sacrifice. There is no category in the normal vocabulary of loss for what happens to Stormo. He is not dead, not alive in any way that means anything, not gone and not present. The show withholds the very framework you would need to grieve him, and it leaves you to build that framework yourself, which is harder, and worse, and more lasting. A death that is not a death, a fatherhood that lasts an afternoon. A sacrifice the show will not even let you call by its name. And the image the episode ends on is one of the loneliest in the entire series. Two creatures locked together on a mountaintop, straining against each other for all of time, the only company either of them will ever have being the enemy they cannot stop fighting. There is a terrible intimacy in that, the closeness of two minds pressed against each other forever, each one the entire world of the other, neither able to rest, because resting means the other wins. The show holds on that image, and then simply leaves it there, on the mountain, where it presumably still is, where Stormo presumably still strains, awake and aware, somewhere out in Ooh while every other story goes on without him. The show never returns to check. It withholds even the courtesy of a backward glance, and so the loneliest sacrifice in the series sits unwitnessed on its mountain, and the only one who remembers it is you. There is a second withholding inside Goliad that is easy to miss, and it has to do with blame. The episode is, underneath the psychic battle, a story about parenting, about what you pass on to the thing you create. Goliad becomes a tyrant because she learns domination from watching Bubblegum rule. Stormo becomes a guardian because he carries Finn's instinct to protect. The two creatures are not good and evil by nature. They are the products of what they were taught, the inheritances of the two very different people who made them, and the episode quietly indicts Bubblegum for the lesson her ward absorbed, without ever stating the charge out loud. Bubblegum made a successor in her own image, and was horrified by what her own image looked like from the outside. The show does not deliver that as an accusation. It just lets the two creatures stand for the two influences, and trusts you to draw the line back to the parents. And Stormo never gets to know any of this. That is the part that lingers. Stormo does not understand that he is a correction, a counterweight, a thing made to fix someone else's mistake. He does not get a life in which to wonder about his own nature, or to resent the purpose he was assigned. He is born, he is pointed at the threat, and he locks in for eternity, and his entire existence is consumed by a job he did not choose, in service of a mistake he did not make. The show gives him no interiority, no chance to object, no moment where he weighs his fate. It simply spends him. And by withholding any acknowledgement of what that costs him, the show makes you supply the acknowledgement yourself, which is the only place it could ever come from, because no one inside the episode is going to give it. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The Box Prince is, on its surface, one of the silliest episodes the show ever made, and that is the disguise it wears so that it can do something quietly devastating underneath. Season 5, Episode 37, aired October 7th, 2013. A cat with a cardboard box on its head appears, and Finn becomes convinced this is royalty, the Box Prince. Deposed from a cardboard kingdom and in need of a champion, Jake thinks it is just a cat. The episode lives in the gap between those two readings, and it never resolves which one is correct. That gap, between the boy who believes and the friend who doubts, is the whole structure of the thing. Finn commits completely. He treats the cat as a prince, helps it reclaim its kingdom from a usurper, fights a war made of cardboard, takes the whole enterprise with total sincerity. And the episode plays along, granting the cat kingdom a visual reality, letting the cardboard boxes become a court, a battlefield, a throne, rendering Finn's belief on screen so that for stretches of the episode, you cannot tell whether you are watching a real fantasy kingdom or a boy's imagination painted over an ordinary animal. The show deliberately refuses to settle the question of how much of this is real. It keeps both possibilities alive at once. Finn is either a hero in a hidden war or a sweet, lonely kid playing an elaborate game with a stray cat, and the episode will not choose for you. Threaded through all of it is the doubt, and the doubt is Jake. Jake is the voice that keeps saying, it is just a cat. He is the reality principle, the friend who loves Finn and worries about him and cannot see what Finn sees. And the tension between them is gentle, but real. Finn needs the kingdom to be real. He needs his loyalty and his effort to mean something, to be in service of an actual prince and an actual cause. Jake needs Finn to be alright, to not be pouring his whole heart into a delusion. Both of those needs are forms of love, and they pull in opposite directions for the length of the episode. Here is the withholding, and it is the whole point of the episode. At the climax, two identical box cats appear, and Finn cannot tell which one is the prince he has been helping, and which is the usurper. They are indistinguishable. The boxes are the same. The cats are the same. And Finn has to make a choice, has to commit to one of them as the true prince, with no way of knowing if he is right. He chooses. He acts on his choice with all the conviction he has. And the episode never tells him, or you, whether he chose correctly. He may have spent the entire day fighting for the wrong cat. He may have restored a tyrant to a throne and exiled the rightful prince. He will never know, and neither will you. Think about what that does to the meaning of everything Finn did. His sincerity, his loyalty, his willingness to take a small strange creature seriously and fight for it. All of that is real, and all of it may have been spent on nothing, or worse than nothing. The show withholds the one piece of information that would tell Finn whether his devotion was well placed. And in doing so, it says something quietly enormous about the cost of caring, about the way you can pour yourself completely into helping someone, into a cause, into a person, and never get to know if it mattered, never get the confirmation that you did the right thing. Most of the genuinely important choices a person makes are like this. You commit without certainty. You act, and you do not get to see the ledger. The Box Prince dresses that idea in cardboard and cat noises, so that it can slip past your defenses, and then it leaves you holding the gap it refused to close. And the gap turns out to be one of the truest things the show ever said about what it is like to try to do good in a world that will not tell you whether you succeeded. And there is a loneliness underneath the comedy that the episode never names but never hides either, which is the loneliness of Finn's belief itself. He wants the kingdom to be real. He needs the cat to be a prince, needs his loyalty to have an object worthy of it, and that need says something about him that the episode treats with great tenderness. Finn is a hero with nothing heroic to do. A boy built for grand quests living through an ordinary afternoon, and so he finds a quest in a cat with a box on its head, and he pours into it all the devotion he has no other outlet for. The episode does not mock him for this. It loves him for it. But it also, by withholding confirmation that the kingdom was ever real, leaves open the possibility that Finn's great loyalty was poured into nothing, and that the real subject of the episode is a good-hearted kid so hungry to matter that he will build a war out of cardboard rather than admit there is nothing here that needs him. Jake the Brick is 12 minutes of a yellow dog narrating the collapse of an abandoned shack, and it won a primetime Emmy for it. And once you understand why, you understand the entire thesis of this video. Season 6, Episode 20, aired November 26, 2014. It took the Emmy for Outstanding Short-Format Animated Program, and it is worth pausing on the strangeness of that, because there is almost nothing in the episode that looks like the kind of thing that wins awards. The setup is almost nothing. Jake has a dream, a long-held wish, to lie down inside a crumbling shack on a hill and experience its final collapse from the inside, to be there at the end of a small structure, to narrate it. And the show lets him do exactly that, with no irony, no undercutting, no sense that this is a joke premise it will abandon halfway through. He disguises himself as a brick. He lies down inside the shack. A storm comes. And as the rain and the wind work the old structure apart, Jake narrates, calmly, tenderly, the slow disintegration of the place around him, and the lives of the tiny creatures who lived in it and must now flee. His voice is gentle and unhurried. He describes the water finding the cracks, the wood giving way, the small animals fleeing into the night. And he does it with the attention of someone witnessing something sacred. His narration spreads. People across the land tune in to listen, drawn to the strange piece of a voice describing the end of something small, with total attention and no fear. The episode is, almost literally, a meditation on impermanence, broadcast to a whole country that did not know it needed to hear it. Now look at what the show withholds, because it is the opposite of what you would expect from a story. There is no plot. There is no threat to overcome, no villain, no stakes in the conventional sense. Jake is never in real danger. There is no twist where the shack collapse becomes a fight or a rescue. The show withholds drama itself. It refuses to make the collapse exciting or frightening. It refuses to rescue the moment with action or to inject a conflict to keep your adrenaline up. It just holds, for the full length of the episode, on a small thing ending, and it asks you to find that beautiful instead of sad, or to find it sad and beautiful at once, which is harder and rarer and more valuable. Most shows would never trust an audience to sit through this. They would not believe that you would stay for 12 minutes of a building falling apart with no peril. They would add a chase, a joke every 30 seconds, a turn, a reason to keep watching that has nothing to do with the quiet. Adventure Time withholds all of it and gives you only the attention, only the held gaze on the thing that is passing. And in doing so, it makes a wager about its audience that almost no show would make. It bets that you will find a slow collapse, narrated with love, more compelling than an explosion. It bets that the absence of drama is not a failure to entertain, but a different and deeper kind of offering. And the way the narration spreads across the land is the show quietly describing its own effect on its audience. People tune into Jake. They stop what they are doing and listen to a voice describing the end of a small thing, and they find in it a piece they did not know they needed. That is, almost exactly, what Adventure Time itself became for so many of the people who grew up with it. A voice in the dark describing endings gently. A place to go when you needed to feel something quiet and true. The episode is the show looking at itself, understanding what it does for the people who love it, and rendering that understanding as a yellow dog lying in a falling shack while a whole country leans in to listen. It does not announce the parallel. It just builds it and lets it sit there, the show describing its own tenderness without ever claiming it. And that attention is the consolation. That is the move, and it is the clearest statement of this show's whole philosophy of grief that exists anywhere in the series. By refusing to dramatize the collapse, the show makes the point that the collapse does not need to be dramatized to matter. A small shack falling apart in the rain is worth a voice describing it gently. A small life ending is worth being witnessed. The thing that is passing does not have to be important by any external measure to deserve attention as it goes. Jake lies in the dark and narrates the end of a building nobody cared about, and his caring is what makes it matter. You do not fix the loss. You do not explain it away. You do not turn it into a story with a hero and a victory. You stay, and you pay attention, and you describe what you see as kindly as you can. The Emmy was not for spectacle. It was for restraint, for the courage to withhold everything except the looking. And the looking turned out to be enough. Stay a moment longer with who is doing the narrating, because the choice of Jake is the quiet key to the whole episode. Jake is the show's comic engine, the shapeshifter, the one who turns into a giant fist or a trampoline or 1,000 silly things to get a laugh. He is the least likely character in the entire cast to be entrusted with a meditation on impermanence. And the show hands it to him precisely because of that. It takes its goofiest, most elastic, most life-affirming character and lies him down inside a dying building and lets him be still and tender and wise. The comedian becomes the witness. And there is something in that casting that is itself part of the consolation. The suggestion that the capacity to sit gently with an ending is not reserved for solemn characters, that the same Jake who cannot stop joking can also, when it matters, simply lie in the dark and describe the end of a small thing with perfect love. And notice that nobody is saved, and the episode treats that as fine. The shack falls. The small creatures who lived in it scatter into the storm and do not come back. Jake does not rebuild it. There is no restoration at the end, no reversal, no version where the loss is undone. The building is gone when the episode ends, the way things are gone when they are gone. Most stories cannot tolerate that. They need the loss to be repaired, or avenged, or given meaning by some later payoff. Jake the Brick withholds all of that, and offers only the witnessing, and in doing so it makes the most radical claim in the whole series, which is that being seen as you end might be the only consolation there is, and that it might be enough. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Lemon Hope is about a child who is finally given his freedom and discovers that freedom is unbearable, and the show refuses to call him a hero for the choice he makes. This is Season 5, Episode 51, the second of the two-part Lemon Hope story, aired March 10th, 2014. Lemon Hope is a creature created by the Earl of Lemongrab, a small lemon person with a magic harp, raised inside the cruelty and chaos of Castle Lemongrab. He is one of the most miserable beings the show ever produced, born into a kingdom of suffering, surrounded by the broken and starving lemon people Lemongrab has made, and the story is about his escape from all of it. In the first part of the story, Lemon Hope flees. He gets out. He crosses the desert. And here is where the episode does something honest and uncomfortable that most stories about freedom would never dare. Freedom does not heal him. Out in the wilderness, alone, he nearly dies, and he is haunted by a vision, a long dream conversation, in which the weight of what he left behind presses down on him. Because Lemon Hope did not just escape suffering. He abandoned the people who were still suffering. The lemon people of Castle Lemongrab needed a leader who could free them, and Lemon Hope ran, choosing his own survival over their liberation. The show will not let him, or you, pretend that choice was clean. The freedom he won is real, and so is the abandonment that paid for it. In the second part he has grown, living far away, having built a life of pure self-directed freedom, a wandering musician with no ties and no obligations. And Princess Bubblegum comes to find him, to ask him to return, to do the thing he was born to do, to free his people from the tyranny that has consumed the castle. This is the call to heroism, the moment in a normal story where the reluctant hero accepts his destiny, and Lemon Hope, after resisting, goes back. He frees them. He plays his harp and breaks the cycle of suffering and liberates the lemon people from the misery that defined his childhood. He does the heroic thing. He pays the debt. And then, having done it, he leaves again. Forever he sails off into a life of his own, alone, with no intention of returning, and the show lets him go. This is the part that makes the episode strange and sad and unlike almost anything else in children's television. The hero saves the day and then immediately abandons the people he saved, not out of villainy, but out of a need so deep he cannot override it, the need to belong to no one. To never again be the thing other people depend on. He freed them, and then he refused to be their leader, refused to stay, refused to let his one act of heroism turn into a lifetime of obligation. He paid what he owed, and then he was gone. What the show withholds here is the judgment. It does not tell you whether Lemonhope is right or wrong to leave. It does not condemn him for choosing himself, and it does not celebrate him for it either. There is no scene where a wise character explains the moral, no narration that resolves the question of whether he is selfish or free or both. It simply presents a child who was given freedom too heavy to carry, who did his duty once and then chose never to belong to anyone again. And it lets that choice stand without comment. The behavioral read is the only read available. He frees them. He sails away. He does not look back. And the show holds on the small figure leaving and trusts you to feel the loneliness of a freedom that costs you every connection you might have had. There is no music telling you to be glad he is free. There is just a child alone on the water, finally unburdened, and finally with no one, and the show declines to tell you whether that is a happy ending or the saddest one in the whole series. And the harp matters more than it first appears, because it is the one thing Lemonhope keeps. He sheds his home, his people, his duty, his name as a future leader, every connection that might bind him, but he carries the instrument with him, and he plays it alone on the water at the end. Music, again, is the channel through which the unspeakable travels in this show, and Lemonhope's whole self has narrowed down to a song with no audience, a beauty made for no one, played by a creature who has chosen to belong to nothing. The show could have made his freedom triumphant, could have scored his departure as liberation. Instead, it gives him a harp and an empty horizon, and lets the music be both the proof of his freedom and the measure of his solitude, and it refuses to tell you which of those two things you are supposed to hear in it. The deepest withholding in Lemonhope is the show's refusal to resolve the question of whether his people were owed his life. The Lemon people suffered, and Lemonhope could have stayed and led them and made their world better, and he chose not to, twice, escaping once as a child and leaving again as an adult the moment his single debt was paid. A different story would settle this. It would either condemn him as selfish or vindicate him as a free soul, and either way it would tell you how to feel about the abandonment of an entire suffering population by the one person who could have helped them. Adventure Time will not settle it. It holds both truths at once, that the people had a real claim on him and that he had a real right to himself, and it lets them sit in tension forever, because the show knows that the conflict between what we owe others and what we owe ourselves does not actually resolve, and it will not lie to you by pretending it does. I Remember You is the one that people cite when they want to prove that this show could hurt you, and the reason it works is almost entirely about what is withheld. Season 4, Episode 25, aired October 15th, 2012, storyboarded by Cole Sanchez and Rebecca Sugar. The Ice King comes to Marceline for help. He wants her to help him write a song, because he is lonely, because no one likes him, because he does not understand why everyone treats him as a nuisance and a fool. He arrives uninvited, oblivious, cheerful in the desperate way of someone who cannot read a room, and he asks the one person who has the most reason to hate him to help him stop being alone. Here is the context the show gives you almost none of, in the moment. The Ice King was once a man named Simon Petrikov. Long ago, before the war. He was an antiquarian who found an ancient crown that granted him power and slowly, irreversibly erased his mind. And before the crown took everything, Simon found a small child, alone in the ruins of the world, and he protected her. He cared for her. He kept her alive while the magic ate his sanity, and that child was Marceline. The Ice King raised her, and he does not remember. The crown took the memory of her along with everything else, and now he stands in front of her, the man who saved her life, asking a stranger to help him not be lonely, with no idea that the woman in front of him is the person he once loved most in the world. The episode does not explain this. Not directly. It does not flash back and lay it out for the audience in a tidy expository sequence. Instead, it does something far more devastating. Marceline finds an old photograph and old notes, and she begins to sing them, and the song is built from words Simon wrote to her when he was losing himself. Words that say, in essence, "Please forgive me for this. Please do not be mad at me. I am sorry. I am not myself anymore. I will not remember writing this." He wrote her an apology in advance, knowing he would forget that he owed it. And she sings his apology back to him, and he does not recognize it. He hums along. He thinks it is just a song they are writing together. The man who wrote the words of love and apology cannot remember writing them, and the woman he saved is singing them to his face, and he does not understand a word of what he is hearing. Watch what the show withholds in the staging of this, because the staging is where the whole episode lives. It does not cut to a flashback to make sure you get it. It does not have a character explain the situation out loud. It does not stop the scene to clarify the history for anyone who came in late. It puts the entire history into a song and then films two people on a couch, one of them devastated, one of them oblivious, and it lets the gap between them be the entire emotional content of the scene. Marceline knows everything. Simon knows nothing. The truth is in the room, sung aloud, in his own words, and it cannot reach the one person it is about. The show holds on Marceline's face, on the effort of not falling apart, on the way she keeps singing, because stopping would mean admitting what is happening, and it does not score the moment to tell you how sad it is. The sadness is the silence between the lyrics and the man who cannot hear them. And consider the specific weight of the song as vessel, because it is not an accident that the truth arrives as music. Throughout the show, music is the only form in which the deepest feelings of these characters can travel. The Fry's song carried Marceline's first wound. Simon's note becomes a song. Music is how the unspeakable gets spoken in OO, the one channel through which the things that cannot be said in conversation can finally be said. And here the channel is jammed. The song reaches the air, the words are sung, but the receiver is broken. Simon's mind cannot decode the message that Simon himself wrote. The one medium that should be able to carry the truth across the gap delivers it perfectly, and it still does not arrive, because the person it is addressed to is no longer there to receive it. That is a deeper and crueler kind of withholding than mere silence. It is the show letting the truth be spoken, and then refusing to let it land. And then, at the very end, the episode gives you one flicker, and then takes it away. For a single moment, something in the Ice King seems to surface. A recognition, a fragment, the ghost of Simon almost breaking through. A flash of the man who knew her, and then it is gone, and he is the Ice King again, confused and cheerful. And the moment closes over like water over a dropped stone. The show will not give you the reunion. It will not let Simon come back, even for a sentence, even for long enough to say her name and mean it. It shows you that he is in there, somewhere, buried under the crown, that the love is not destroyed, but only sealed away where it cannot reach the surface, and then it locks the door again and walks you out. That is the cruelest withholding the show had attempted to that point, and it is the reason this episode is the one people never forget. It does not let either of them have the moment. It only lets you see that the moment could have existed, and then it closes it off forever. There is a detail in the way Marceline treats him throughout the episode that rewards close attention, because it is the behavioral evidence the show offers in place of explanation. She is short with him. She is annoyed, dismissive, the way you would expect anyone to be with the Ice King, who is genuinely irritating, who kidnaps princesses and breaks into homes and cannot take a hint. For most of the episode, she treats him exactly the way the rest of OO does, as a nuisance to be managed. And then, as she reads the old notes and understands what she is holding, the annoyance curdles into something else, something she cannot let him see. The show never has her explain the shift. It just lets her face change. The cruelty she could have aimed at him collapses into a grief she has to hide from the very person who caused it and could comfort it, and can do neither, because he is not there anymore. The behavior tells you everything the dialogue refuses to. And think about the structure of what Simon did all those years ago when he wrote the note. He knew he was going to forget. He understood that the crown was taking him, that the man who loved this child would be gone, and so he did the only thing a person in that situation can do. He left a message for a future in which he would not exist to deliver it. The note is a letter from a dying man to the child he is leaving, except that the dying is the dying of the mind, and the man's body will go on, cheerful and oblivious, carrying the apology he can no longer read. There is no sadder document in the entire series than a note that says, "I am sorry, please forgive me. I will not remember being sorry." He apologized in advance for an abandonment he could not prevent and would not even know he had committed. And the show puts that note into a song, and lets the man sing it without knowing it is his, and that is the moment, more than any other, where you understand what this show is willing to do to you, what the episode finally teaches, without ever teaching it, is that some losses cannot be grieved properly because the person is still standing in front of you. There is no funeral for Simon, because Simon's body is alive and cheerful and breaking into Marceline's house. There is no grave to visit, no clean moment of mourning, only the ongoing presence of the man who used to be the person you lost, walking around, talking to you, asking for help, with no memory of who he was to you. That is a specific and terrible kind of grief. The grief that has no end because it has no death to mark it, and the show found the exact image for it. Two people on a couch, one holding a whole history and the other holding nothing, and a song passing uselessly between them. The Ice King is not a villain in this story. He is suffering from the exact wound he inflicted, the loss of Simon, and he does not even know it is a wound, does not know there was ever a Simon to lose. The show asks you to hold the irritating Ice King and the lost Simon in the same body at the same time, to feel for the man without forgetting the nuisance, and it withholds the simplification that would let you only pity him or only dismiss him, and leaves you with the whole impossible person. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Simon and Marcy is the prequel to that grief, and knowing how the story ends does not protect you from it, because the episode is constructed to make you watch the loss happen in slow motion. Season 5, Episode 14, aired March 25th, 2013. It was Rebecca Sugar's final storyboard for the show before she left to create Steven Universe, and you can feel the weight of a goodbye in every frame of it, the care of someone putting down something they loved. The episode takes you back, fully, to the time when Simon Petrikov was still mostly Simon, traveling through the ruined post-war world with a small child named Marceline. Keeping her alive, the world they move through is a nightmare. It is the aftermath of the Mushroom War, a landscape of rubble and monsters and radiation, the bombed-out remains of the human world 1,000 years before the bright Candyland the show usually shows you, and Simon is trying to get a hungry little girl to safety through all of it. He is the only protection she has, a fragile scholar with a magic crown, shepherding a child through the end of the world. They forage, they hide, they keep moving, and the whole time, the crown is there, the only thing that gives Simon the power to keep her alive, and the only thing that is killing the part of him that wants to. That is the central, terrible mechanic of the episode. Every time he puts the crown on, he gains the power to protect her, to fight off the creatures, to keep her safe, and every time he puts it on, it takes a little more of him. He is trading himself away in pieces to keep her safe, and he knows it, and he does it anyway, over and over, because the alternative is letting her die. Watch how clearly the episode shows this transaction. When the crown is off, he is Simon, gentle and frightened and kind, a man holding on to his sanity by his fingernails. When the crown goes on, he becomes powerful and strange, the Ice King beginning to surface, and a little more of Simon does not come back when he takes it off again. The episode makes you watch a man choose, repeatedly, to erase himself in order to save the child he loves. The show withholds the future and shows you only the present, which makes it almost more painful, because you carry the future in with you. You know what the crown will do to him. You know he will forget her completely. You know that the man singing to this child, making her laugh, promising to protect her, will one day stand in front of her grown self and not know her name, will one day come to her asking a stranger for help, writing a lonely song. The episode does not remind you of any of this. It does not need to. It simply shows you the love being built that the crown will erase, and it trusts the weight of what you already know to do the work. Every tender moment is shadowed by the I remember you couch, and the show never mentions the couch once. There is a moment at the center of the episode that is one of the finest things the show ever did, and it is built entirely on restraint. Simon, slipping into the madness of the crown, his mind fracturing, manages to hold himself together long enough to comfort the frightened child. He sings to her. He sings the theme song to the old television show Cheers, the song about a place where everybody knows your name, where you are always welcome, where you belong. He sings it to a little girl in the wreckage of the world, a song about belonging, while the crown erases his ability to belong to anyone, and the show does not add a single note of its own underneath it. It just gives you Simon's cracking voice, and the child holding on to him, and it lets the chosen song carry the unbearable irony without ever pointing at it. He is promising her a place where everybody knows your name, and he is in the process of becoming a man who will not know hers. That is the withholding at its most complete. The show could tell you that this is the last good time. It could mark the moment as the hinge on which the whole tragedy turns, could swell the music, could cut to Marceline's adult face to remind you what is coming. Instead, it gives you a man singing a borrowed song about home to a child he will not remember having loved, and it stays out of the way entirely. No score, no narration, no flash forward. Just the present moment, held, with the future you already know pressing down on every second of it. And because Rebecca Sugar storyboarded this as her farewell to the show, there is a second layer of goodbye underneath the first. An artist leaving the thing she helped build, drawing a story about a man losing himself for love. Simon and Marcy is a goodbye that the show refuses to call a goodbye, and that refusal is what makes it devastating. And there is a structural cruelty in where this episode sits relative to I Remember You, which aired more than a year earlier. By the time Simon and Marcy arrives, you have already seen the end of this relationship. You have already watched the grown Marceline sing his apology to a man who cannot hear it. So when you go back to the beginning, to the small girl, and the man still mostly himself, you are watching a love story whose ending you have already grieved. There is no suspense, only dread. Every gentle moment between them is one you know the price of. The laugh he gets from her, the meal he scrounges for her, the song he sings to calm her, all of it is borrowed against a future you have already seen foreclosed. The show built the tragedy backwards on purpose, showing you the wound before showing you the love, so that the love would arrive already broken. That is a deliberate withholding of hope. There was never any hope to withhold, and the episode knows it, and it makes you know it too. And consider what the crown actually is as a metaphor, because the show is doing something precise with it that it never spells out. The crown is the thing that gives Simon the power to protect Marceline, and the thing that erases his ability to love her. The two functions are inseparable. He cannot save her without it, and he cannot keep himself with it. The protection and the loss are the same act. Every time he becomes strong enough to keep her alive, he becomes a little less the person who wanted to. That is one of the truest and most quietly horrifying ideas the show ever built. The notion that the sacrifices we make for the people we love can cost us the very self that loved them. That you can give yourself away so completely in the act of caring that there is nothing left at the end to remember why you did it. The show never says any of this. It just shows you a man putting on a crown again and again, getting a little more lost each time, and it lets the metaphor do its work in the dark. And the title itself is part of the grief, if you sit with it. Simon and Marcy. Not the Ice King and Marceline, the names they carry now, but the names they had then, the names from before. The names of a man and a child who loved each other in the ruins of the world. The episode insists on calling them by who they were rather than who they became, and in doing so it mourns the people the rest of the series can no longer name. By the present day, Simon is gone and Marcy is grown into Marceline, and the names in the title belong to no one anymore. The show titles its saddest flashback after two people who do not exist in its present, and it does not explain the choice, does not point at the loss embedded in the words. It just calls them Simon and Marcy, gently, one last time, and lets you understand on your own that the title is already an elegy. Escape from the Citadel is where the show takes its hero, the boy at the center of everything, and lets him lose in the most human way possible, and then it withholds even the dignity of an explanation. Season 6, Episode 2, aired April 21st, 2014, the direct continuation of the previous episode, Wake Up. For years, Finn has wondered about his father. He is the last human, or believes he is, raised by dogs, with no parents. And the question of where he came from has been a quiet ache running under the whole series, surfacing now and then and never resolving. And in these episodes, he finds him. Martin. His father is alive, imprisoned in a cosmic citadel, a place where the worst criminals of the multiverse are held, and Finn goes to him with all the hope a child can carry. Finn breaks in. He finds his father, and Martin does not recognize him. Sit with how complete that failure is. This is not a father who is cold, or angry, or who rejects his son after recognizing him. This is a father who looks at his own child and does not know who he is. Martin is a con man, a survivor, a man whose entire mode of being is escape, and when his long-lost son appears in front of him, his first instinct is to use him. To use the chaos of the moment and the boy's eagerness to break free of the prison. There is no tearful reunion. There is no apology. Finn, who has carried the hope of this meeting his whole life, watches his father treat him as a tool, an obstacle, a means to an end, and then watches him leave. Martin flees, and he does not take Finn with him, and he does not look back. And Finn, reaching out for the father he finally found, falls, and then comes the injury, the one everyone remembers. In the chaos of the escape, Finn loses his right arm. The Citadel breaks apart, the cosmic blood of an ancient guardian floods the scene, and when it clears, Finn is floating in the water, and his arm is gone. A small flower has begun to grow from the stump where it used to be. And Jake swims to him and asks if he is okay. And Finn does not answer. He floats there, his arm gone, his father gone, the hope of his whole life gone, and he says nothing. The two losses arrive in the same minute, the physical and the emotional fused into a single wound, the father and the arm taken together, and Finn cannot speak. Here is the withholding, and it is the most famous example of the technique in the entire show, the one that the rest of this video has been circling toward. There is no music under that final scene. The show strips the score out completely. The biggest emotional and physical injury Finn has ever suffered, the loss of a limb and the loss of a father in the same moment, and the show plays it in near total silence. No swelling strings. No soft piano to tell you it is sad. No musical cue of any kind to guide your reaction. Just the sound of water, and Jake's voice asking a question that gets no answer, and a held shot on a boy floating with a flower growing out of his wound. The show refuses, absolutely refuses, to tell you how to feel about it. And it refuses to explain it, too. Why does the flower grow? What does it mean? Is it hope? Is it damage? Is it nature reclaiming what was lost? Is it a sign of something to come? The show does not say, not here, not for a long time. It plants the image, holds on it, and ends. Think about the confidence that takes. This is a program that aired on Cartoon Network in the afternoon, ending an episode on its protagonist, maimed and abandoned, silent in the water, with no music and no explanation, no comforting button, no promise that things will be all right. The show trusts a child watching at home half asleep to feel the full weight of that with no instruction at all. That trust is the heartbreak. The show withholds everything except the image, and the image is enough, and the show knows it is enough, and that knowledge, that absolute faith that the silence will do more than any score could, is the highest expression of everything this show believes about how grief should be filmed. There is one more thing the silence does, and it is the cruelest and most precise of all. Jake asks if he is okay, and the question hangs there with no answer, and the held shot lets you sit inside the unanswered question for what feels like a very long time. Most shows, having maimed and abandoned a child hero in the same breath, would rush to reassure you. They would give you a line of dialogue, a swell of hopeful music, some small signal that the show is going to take care of this. That Finn will be all right, that the wound will be addressed. This show gives you none of that. It refuses to confirm that Finn is okay, because Finn is not okay, and the show will not lie to you to make the moment more bearable. It lets the question go unanswered, because that is the honest shape of the moment, and it trusts you to bear the honesty. The absence of the reassurance is the show refusing to comfort you with a falsehood, and there is a strange respect in that refusal, the respect of a story that will not condescend to your grief by pretending it is smaller than it is. And the loss of the arm is the loss of the father in a form Finn will have to carry visibly for the rest of the series. This is the detail that makes the episode resonate forward instead of closing. He does not just lose Martin in a single bad afternoon and move on. He loses his arm in the same instant, and the missing arm becomes a permanent reminder, a wound he wears, a thing his body will keep saying about that day long after his words have stopped. The show fuses the emotional injury and the physical one into a single image, so that the grief cannot be tidied away or forgotten, so that Finn, every time he looks down, is reminded of the moment his father chose freedom over him. That is why the flower matters so much, and why the show withholding its meaning matters so much. The mystery of whether the flower is hope or harm is the mystery of whether Finn will grow something new out of this loss or simply be marked by it forever. And the show declines to answer because the answer has not been written yet, because that is what the next 2 seasons are going to be about. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. What follows The Citadel is the closest thing this show ever made to a sustained study of a single grief, 3 episodes across 2 seasons that trace one boy's loss of one father, from the wound to the obsession to the final letting go. The Citadel is the injury. The tower is the obsession. The comet is the acceptance. And the remarkable thing is that the show spreads this arc out across so much time, lets episodes about entirely other things sit between the chapters, so that Finn's grief plays out at the pace real grief actually moves. In fits and silences and long stretches where nothing happens, and then a sudden return of the ache. The show withholds the tidy timeline of healing. It does not resolve the loss in one episode and move on. It lets it run underground for seasons, surfacing when it has to, exactly the way a real loss does, and that patience, that refusal to hurry a boy through his mourning, is its own form of the same tenderness we have been tracing all night. The tower is the aftermath of that wound. And it is one of the most psychologically precise things the show ever made, and its heartbreak comes from the comfort it builds and then deliberately destroys. Season 6, Episode 4, aired May 5th, 2014. Finn, having lost his arm and been abandoned by his father, begins to grow a new arm. Not a real one at first, a psychic one. His grief and his rage manifest as a phantom limb, a magical arm born of his need to reach his father and make him answer for what he did. The arm is not a power-up, it is a symptom. It is what Finn's unprocessed loss looks like when it takes physical form. And Finn uses that arm to build. He starts constructing a tower, reaching up toward space, toward the place his father fled to. And the tower grows as his obsession grows. It becomes enormous, a structure that climbs out of the atmosphere, built brick by a child who cannot let go of the man who left him. The whole kingdom watches it rise, and his friends grow worried, because they can see what Finn cannot. That the building is not really about reaching Martin at all, but about refusing to accept that Martin is gone. The show lets you understand, without saying it, that the tower is grief made physical. That Finn is constructing a way to reach the unreachable. That every level he adds is a refusal to let the wound close. He climbs it. He goes up and up, toward space, toward Martin, and the magic arm pulls him onward, growing stronger the closer he gets to the object of his rage. And he reaches the top, and there is his father, finally, within reach. The episode has been promising this confrontation from its first minute. Finn is going to reach Martin and finally say the thing, finally make him account for the abandonment, finally close the wound by force. Finn extends the psychic arm and grabs him, and the episode reveals in that moment the terrible truth it has been building toward. There is no father at the top of the tower. There never was. The thing Finn grabbed is empty. The whole structure, the whole climb, the whole obsession was Finn reaching for something that was not there, a projection of his own need, and when he finally closes his hand on it, there is nothing in his grip. What the show withholds is the catharsis of confrontation. The entire episode is engineered to promise a reckoning, and then to deny it at the summit. There is no confrontation, because there is no father to confront, only the space where a father should be, the shape of an absence the size of a man. And this is a profound thing to do to a viewer who has been waiting, along with Finn, for the satisfaction of the meeting. The show denies you the revenge fantasy. It denies you the scene where the wronged child finally gets to say his piece to the parent who failed him. It gives you instead the much harder truth that the parent is not even there to receive the words. That the confrontation you have been craving was always a fiction. that there is no one at the top of the tower because the person you are angry at has already gone. Finn's healing, when it comes, does not come from reaching Martin. It comes from letting go of the tower, from accepting that the man at the top was never real, that you cannot grab your way to a person who has chosen to be gone. The phantom arm disappears. The need that built it releases its grip. And Finn comes back down to earth, armless again, and quieter, and a little more grown. That is a remarkable lesson to withhold the easy version of, and to deliver only the hard version of, in a children's program. The show refuses to give Finn the satisfying revenge, and it refuses to let the grief be resolved by confrontation, because it knows that real grief is almost never resolved that way. Instead, it shows him, and you, that the only way out of the obsession is to stop reaching, to lower the arm, to let the tower fall. The healing is in the letting go, not in the grabbing, and the show makes Finn discover that by letting him reach the very top and find nothing there. It is the gentlest and the hardest lesson the series ever taught, and it taught it by withholding the very thing the whole episode promised. And the phantom arm is one of the most exact images of grief the show ever produced, more exact than the silence of the citadel, because it externalizes the thing grief actually does to a person. Finn's loss does not stay inside him. It grows out of him, into the world, into a structure that everyone can see, that gets bigger the longer he refuses to deal with it. That is what unprocessed grief is. It does not sit quietly. It builds. It reaches. It constructs elaborate architectures of need, ways to get back to the person who is gone, plans and obsessions and towers to space, all of them aimed at the impossible goal of undoing the loss. The show makes the metaphor literal so that you can watch it happen, so that you can see the grief take the shape of a building and climb toward a father who is not there. And the only way the structure ever comes down is when Finn stops needing it to reach anything, which is the show's plain and patient statement that you do not heal grief by satisfying it, but by setting down the thing it was reaching for. And what is at the top is the most honest answer the show could have given, harder than any confrontation. Emptiness, not a cruel father, not even an absent one Finn can rage at, but simply nothing. The bare fact of an absence with no person in it to receive his anger. Because that is what abandonment actually leaves you with. Not a villain to defeat, but a hole the shape of someone who decided not to be there. The tower gives Finn the climb and the reach and the grab, and then puts nothing in his hand. And in doing so, it tells him the truth that the rest of the show has been circling. That you cannot resolve a loss by getting the lost thing back, because the lost thing is already gone. And the only door out of the grief is the one marked acceptance, which is the one nobody ever wants to walk through. Stakes is the longest sustained piece of grief the show ever attempted, an 8-part miniseries that aired across November of 2015, and it is built around a character finally trying to put down 1,000 years of loss. It runs from Season 7, Episode 6, titled Marceline the Vampire Queen, through Season 7, Episode 13. The story begins with Marceline doing something almost no immortal in fiction ever gets to do. She decides she does not want to be a vampire anymore. She wants to be mortal. She wants to age and change and eventually die, like a person, and she asks Princess Bubblegum to help her remove the vampire essence from her body, to make her ordinary, breakable, finite. Consider what that desire actually is, because it inverts everything stories usually say about immortality. Marceline has lived for over 1,000 years. She has watched the entire world she was born in to vanish. She has lost her mother, lost Simon to the crown, lost every ordinary human connection that a normal lifespan would have given and taken in turn. And she has decided that immortality, the thing every story treats as a prize, is a sentence. She wants out. She wants to be the kind of creature that can lose things and then itself be lost. Because the alternative, going on forever while everything she loves disappears, has become unbearable. The miniseries opens on a 1,000-year-old woman choosing to become breakable, and the show treats that choice not as folly, but as the most reasonable thing in the world. And the structure of the miniseries itself is a kind of withholding, because Stakes is built to look like a horror story, and is actually a story about exhaustion. The ancient vampires, the hunt, the monsters released by the cure, all the machinery of a vampire epic is there, And the show uses it, but the real engine underneath is not fear. It is tiredness. Marceline is tired in a way that only 1,000 years can make a person tired. The specific fatigue of having outlived every world she ever belonged to. The horror trappings are the surface the show offers, so that it can smuggle in something far quieter. The portrait of someone who has simply had enough of forever. The monsters are real, but they are not the point. The point is a woman lying down and saying, in effect, that she does not want to do this anymore. That the gift everyone envies has become a weight she would give anything to put down. And the show dresses that confession in fangs and battles so that it can be made at all. What makes the desire so legible is the accumulation behind it. The 1,000 years of small losses the show has shown you across the series in pieces. By the time Stakes arrives, you have seen the Fries and the abandoning father. You have seen Simon lost to the crown while his body lived on. You have seen her hoard her own past selves in a vault, rather than face them. You have watched her outlast, and outlast, and outlast. Stakes does not have to explain why Marceline wants to die someday, because the show has spent 6 seasons assembling the answer, scattered across episodes, never gathered into a single speech. And so when she asks to become mortal, the request lands with the full weight of everything you have watched her survive, and the show does not need to recap a word of it. It withholds the summary because it trusts you to have been paying attention all along, to carry the accumulated grief into this moment yourself. The second part contains the song that has become inseparable from the whole series, and it is a lullaby about loss, disguised as a lullaby about permanence. Marceline, in a hallucination during the procedure, returns to a memory of her mother, Elise, singing to her when she was a small child, before the war, before everything. The song is called Everything Stays. The lyrics are gentle and circular and quietly devastating. They say that everything stays right where you left it, and in the same breath that everything changes, slowly, a little at a time, while you are not looking. It is a song a mother sings to comfort a child, and it is also, when you really listen, a precise description of exactly the kind of slow, unstoppable loss that 1,000-year life is made of. The show withholds the comfort the song seems to offer. On the surface, Everything Stays is reassuring. Things stay. You are safe. Nothing is really lost. But the second half of the line undoes the first. Everything stays, but it still changes. The mother who sings it will not stay. The child who hears it will outlive everyone she will ever meet. The song is the lie that immortality disproves, sung by the one person Marceline lost earliest, the mother she barely got to have. And the miniseries places it at the center of a story about a woman trying to escape the curse of staying while everything else changes and dies. The show gives you a beautiful, soothing melody and then lets you understand, without spelling it out, that it is describing the exact wound the whole story is about. It does not explain the contradiction. It just sings it and trusts you to feel both halves at once, the comfort and the lie braided together so tightly you cannot pull them apart, and the placement of the memory matters as much as the song inside it. Marceline does not simply remember her mother. She returns to her during the procedure, in the vulnerable, unguarded state of a body being remade. And the memory surfaces because she is finally letting her defenses down enough to feel it. For 1,000 years she has kept this away. The mother, the lullaby, the early love that the early loss poisoned. And now, at the moment she is trying to become mortal, to become someone who can finally let things go, the oldest tenderness she has comes back up to meet her. The show frames her attempt to put down immortality as the same act as letting herself feel her mother again, as if the thing keeping her immortal was never just biology, but the refusal to grieve, the long-armored holding on that being a vampire let her sustain. It does not say this. It just puts the lullaby at the center of the cure and lets you connect the two. Across the middle of the miniseries, Marceline must face the ancient vampires she once destroyed, the Vampire King and his court, released back into the world by the very procedure that was meant to free her. The cure had a cost. In removing the vampirism from her body, the process let loose the old monsters whose essence she had absorbed. And now she has to fight them, while newly mortal and vulnerable, stripped of the powers that kept her safe for 1,000 years. The deepest of these confrontations is with a figure who represents pure, parasitic hunger. The part of vampirism that is not power, but emptiness. The need that can never be filled. A creature that consumes and is never satisfied. Marceline, now mortal and afraid, has to confront the thing she used to be, the predator she became to survive, and the show frames it not as an action climax, but as a reckoning with her own history of taking, surviving, and outlasting everyone. And the hunger this creature embodies is the secret subject of the whole miniseries, because hunger is what immortality feels like from the inside. To live forever is to keep needing, keep consuming, keep reaching for the next thing that will fill a space that cannot be filled, because everything you love is temporary, and you are not, and so you are always eternally hungry for a permanence you can never have. The vampire who is pure appetite is Marceline's own immortality shown back to her without the disguise of personality. The endless need stripped of everything but the need. And when she has to face it, mortal and small, she is facing the truth about what her 1,000 years actually were. Not power, not glamour, but a hunger that never once got to stop. The show does not state this. It builds a monster out of pure appetite and lets you feel, without a word of commentary, that the monster is what Marceline has been quietly afraid she is. By the final part, Marceline has been forced back into immortality to win the fight. The mortality she chose taken away from her again by necessity, and the miniseries refuses to give her the clean ending she spent 8 episodes reaching for. She does not get to be mortal. She does not get to age and die like a person. She wins the battle and loses the wish, and the show withholds the resolution she wanted most. Think about how unusual that is for a story built around a character's central desire. She asked for one thing. The whole miniseries was her quest to get it, and the ending takes it away from her and hands her back the very condition she was trying to escape. The cure was undone. The 1,000-year sentence resumes. But it gives her something else, something quieter, in the final moments when she lies in the grass and talks about what she has been through, about the people who stayed with her through all of it. The comfort the show offers at the end of Stakes is not the comfort she asked for. It is the smaller, truer one. She does not get to stop being immortal. But she does not have to be immortal alone. Bubblegum stayed, her friends stayed. The condition is the same, but the company is not, and that, the show suggests without ever saying it directly, is the only thing that actually makes the long life survivable. The show takes the wish and leaves the connection, and it does not pretend for a second that this is the same thing as winning. It is something else. It is the thing you get instead of winning, and the show lets it be enough without lying that it is everything. And there is a quiet rhyme between Marceline's ending and the lullaby that opened her arc, which the show never points to, but which is the whole shape of the thing. Everything stays said that everything stays, and everything changes at once. By the end of Stakes, that is exactly what has happened to her. She stays immortal, the condition unchanged, the 1,000-year sentence intact. And yet everything has changed, because she is no longer carrying it alone, because the people around her have made the staying survivable in a way it was not before. The lullaby was not wrong, and it was not a comfort either. It was simply true, in the hard way the show prefers, and Marceline ends the miniseries living inside its truth, unchanged and completely changed, exactly as her mother sang. The show closes the arc on the exact paradox it opened with, and it never once draws the line between them, because drawing the line would be doing your feeling for you, and this show has never once been willing to do that. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The comet is where the show finally lets Finn say goodbye to his father, and it does it by giving Martin one last chance to choose his son and watching him choose otherwise. Season 6, Episode 43, aired March 30th, 2015. It is the climax of a long arc, the conclusion of everything that began with the Citadel and ran through the tower. A great comet is approaching, the same kind of catalyst comet that has come to the world across the ages, a cosmic body tied to the deepest history of Ooo, and Martin, Finn's father, is offered the chance to ascend with it, to leave his physical body and become something cosmic and eternal and free, to escape one final time in the most permanent way available. And Finn is there. After everything, after the abandonment, after the lost arm, after the tower he built and let fall, Finn is standing in front of his father again. And this time there is a real choice on the table. And Finn knows it, and Martin knows it. Martin can take the comet and ascend, leaving his son forever, becoming something beyond human connection and human accountability. Or he can stay. He can choose finally to be a father, to remain in the world with the boy who has spent his whole life reaching for him. The show sets up the choice with total clarity. There is no ambiguity about what is being offered, or what it would mean. It is the reckoning the tower promised and withheld, arriving for real, with the father actually present this time, actually able to choose. And the show makes you feel the cruelty of how close the better ending is, which is its own form of withholding. There is a version of this scene, fully available right up to the last second, in which Martin stays. The choice is genuine. Nothing forces his hand. He could turn to his son, the boy who climbed a tower to space for him, who broke into a cosmic prison for him, and he could choose to remain, and the whole long wound could begin to heal. The show lets that possibility stay alive until the final moment, lets you hope for it, even though you have learned by now not to, and then it closes the door. That is harder than an abandonment with no alternative. An abandonment with no alternative is just fate. An abandonment that was freely chosen, with the good option sitting right there, is a verdict on what Finn was worth to his father, and the show delivers that verdict plainly, and then refuses to soften it with a single comforting word. And Martin chooses the comet. He chooses ascension. He chooses to leave. The show does not soften it, does not give him a tearful explanation, does not let him offer Finn a reason that would make it all right, or recast the abandonment as a sacrifice. He simply weighs the cosmic option against his son, and takes the cosmic option, abandoning Finn, one final, definitive time, and the show lets that be the answer. Some fathers do not come back. Some fathers, given every chance, with their child standing right in front of them asking, will still choose the thing that is not you. The comet states that plainly, without melodrama and without mercy, and it does not pretend there is a version of the story where Martin becomes the father Finn needed. The door that Finn spent 2 seasons trying to open is opened, and what is behind it is a man walking the other way. But here is where the withholding becomes, at last, a kind of grace, and where the long arc of Finn's grief finally pays off. Because Finn, watching his father leave for the last time, does not break. He does not build another tower. He does not chase him. He has already done the work, back on the tower, of learning to let go. And so when the real abandonment comes, he is ready for it in a way he was not before. He accepts it. He grieves it. But he does not let it destroy him. He lets his father go. Fully. Finally. And he turns back toward the world and the people who actually stayed. The show withholds the happy reunion it could so easily have manufactured, the redemption arc, the tearful embrace, and in its place, it gives Finn something the reunion never could have. It gives him the ability to survive his father's choice. The grief is real and the loss is permanent, and Finn is alright anyway, because the people who love you are not always the people you came from, and the show, for once, lets that be a comfort instead of a wound. That is the first real comfort in this whole night that the show actually allows to arrive, and it arrives only because Finn earned it by learning to stop reaching. And it matters that the show ties Martin's choice to the deepest cosmic machinery of the whole series, the catalyst comet that has shaped the history of Ooh across the ages. Because it makes his abandonment final in a way no human departure could be. Martin does not just walk away the way he walked away at the Citadel. He ascends past the reach of the world entirely, leaves his body, becomes part of something that operates on a scale where a single sun does not register. There is no prison to break into this time, no tower tall enough to reach him. No version of the future where Finn could ever find him again. The comet closes the door not by slamming it, but by removing the wall it was set in. And the show, having spent 2 seasons letting Finn chase this man, ends the chase by putting Martin somewhere Chase cannot follow, and then it asks the only question that was ever really worth asking. Which is not whether Finn can get his father back, but whether Finn can be alright without him. The answer, finally, quietly, is yes, and the show lets that yes be the hardest won comfort in the entire run. There is also a generosity in how the show declines to make Martin a monster, which is its own kind of withholding, the withholding of the easy villain. It would be simpler if Martin were cruel, if Finn could hate him cleanly and be done. But the show refuses to give Finn that clarity. Martin is charming and weak and self-interested in the ordinary human way. A man who loves his own freedom more than he can love anyone else and is not even villain enough to be ashamed of it. That is harder to grieve than a monster, because you cannot resolve it into anger. You have to hold the contradiction of a father who is not evil and is still never going to be there, who might even, in his way, feel something for you and will still always choose the comet. The show withholds the simplification that would let Finn off the hook of loving him. And so Finn has to do the much more difficult thing, which is to let go of someone he was never allowed to cleanly stop caring about. Come Along With Me is the end of everything. A 44-minute finale that aired September 3rd, 2018, closing out 8 years and hundreds of episodes. And its job is the hardest job a finale ever has. It has to say goodbye to everyone at once. It has to end a world that an entire generation grew up inside. And the show, which spent a decade learning how to withhold comfort at the exact moment you needed it, does something here that it had never quite done before. It gives the comfort back. After all the silence, and all the held shots, and all the things left unexplained, the finale turns its whole technique inside out and uses it, for once, to console you, rather than to leave you alone with the feeling. Note the official title, by the way. Cartoon Network marketed the finale as a special event, but the episode is called Come Along With Me, and it is one continuous ending, not a set of separate parts, however the runtime gets counted in the databases. The plot is a war, and the threat of an ending. Golb, a cosmic entity of pure chaos and unmaking, descends on Ooh, and the conflict that has been building for years comes to a head with everything at stake at once. But the show, true to itself to the very last, does not resolve the final battle with a bigger sword or a stronger punch or a clever plan. It resolves it with a song. In the heart of the chaos, with everything about to be unmade, with the heroes losing, Mo begins to sing. And the song is Time Adventure, a song Rebecca Sugar came back to the show to write, years after she had left to make Steven Universe, returning for the ending the way Simon's old self briefly returns at the end of I Remember You. The artist who drew the goodbye in Simon and Marcy came back to write the song that ends the whole story. The song is about exactly the thing the whole series has been circling for 10 years. It says that the time you spend together is not lost when it ends. It says that what happened, happened, and cannot be taken away, that the memory of love is itself a kind of permanence. That you do not need to hold on to a moment forever to have it be real, because it was real, and being real is enough. It is, in a sense, the answer to everything stays, the reply to the lullaby that promised permanence and could not deliver it. Time Adventure does not promise that things will stay. It promises something harder and truer, that the fact of having happened is itself indestructible. That even when everything changes and everyone is gone, the time you had cannot be unmade. One by one, the characters join in. The whole world begins to sing it, the way the whole land tuned into Jake narrating The Shack, the way grief and comfort in this show have always spread by being witnessed and shared. And the song, sung together, is what defeats the unmaking. Connection is the weapon. It always was. And here is the inversion. The thing the finale does that justifies everything that came before, the reason this whole night has been building to this episode. For 10 seasons, the show withheld the music at the moments of deepest pain. No score under the citadel. No swelling strings when Simon sang cheers to a child he would forget. No instruction on how to feel after tree trunks vanished. No music to soften the flower on Finn's stump, just held shots and silence and trust. And now, at the very end, the show finally gives you the song. It plays the music it spent a decade refusing to play. After teaching you, episode by episode, room by room, to sit with grief in silence and feel it yourself, the show steps back into the room, sits down beside you in the dark and starts to sing. The withholding was never coldness. It was never the show being unable to comfort you. It was the show trusting you to feel things on your own, so that when it finally offered comfort, at the end, you would know it was earned, and real, and meant entirely. The finale ends, as it must, on goodbye. The characters scatter into their futures. Time passes. The show jumps forward, far forward, to a world 1,000 years later, where the stories of Finn and Jake have become legend, half remembered, sung by people who never knew them. Everything has changed. The Candy Kingdoms, the heroes, The whole world of Ooh as we knew it has moved on into history. And yet, in exactly the way Time Adventure promised, everything stays. Because the love that happened cannot unhappen. Because the time they spent together is folded permanently into what the world became, present in it even when no one remembers the names. The show that broke your heart by taking the comfort away, over and over, for 10 years, ends by handing it all back at once. And it turns out the comfort was waiting on the other side of the threshold the entire time. You only had to be quiet enough, and patient enough, and willing to sit in the dark long enough to reach it. And there is a particular grace in resolving the final conflict the way the show does. Because it is the show keeping a promise it made in its very first episodes without ever telling you it had made one. From the beginning, Adventure Time was a show about a boy and a dog who solved things with a sword. The genre promised that the answers would be physical, that the threats would be beaten. And across 10 years the show quietly walked away from that promise, episode by episode, learning that its real subject was never combat but connection. That the thing that actually saves anyone in Ooh is not the sword, but the refusal of separate, frightened creatures to face the dark alone. So when the literal end of the world arrives, and the answer turns out to be a song that everyone sings together rather than a blow that anyone strikes, it does not feel like a cheat. It feels like the show finally saying out loud the thing it had been demonstrating in silence the whole time. The withholding across the years was teaching you what the show valued, and the finale simply makes the lesson explicit. And consider the 1,000-year time jump as the show's last and largest act of trust. It would have been easy, and satisfying in a cheap way, to end on the characters together, frozen in a happy moment, the band intact forever. Instead, the show leaps 1,000 years into the future and shows you a world where they are gone, where their names are half-remembered legends, where the specific people you spent a decade loving have passed entirely out of living memory. That is a brutal thing to do to an audience in a finale. But it is also the show being honest one final time, refusing to pretend that the people you love stay forever just because you want them to. And then, in the same breath, it offers the only comfort that survives that honesty, which is that what happened still happened, that the love folded itself into the shape of the world and persists there even when no one can name it, that you do not need permanence to have had something real. The show withholds the liar forever and gives you the truth of having mattered, and it trusts you, half asleep, to find that the truth is the kind of gift. And there is a final symmetry in who sings the first notes, because it is Mo, the little robot, the most innocent and least mortal member of the whole cast. Mo does not age. Mo does not die the way the others will. And it is Mo, the one who will outlast all of them, who begins the song that turns out to be about how the ones who pass were real and cannot be unmade. The show places the song of impermanence in the mouth of the one character who will not have to suffer it, and there is something almost unbearably gentle in that choice, the sense of a witness who will carry the memory forward, who will still be there 1,000 years later when the others are legend, singing the same notes. Mo becomes the keeper of the comfort, the proof that what happened stays even after everyone who lived it is gone, and the show hands that role to its smallest character without a word of explanation, the way it has handed you everything tonight. And notice that the finale, for all its scale, still refuses to over-explain itself in the way the show always has. It does not tie off every thread. It does not answer every question it raised across 10 years, does not tell you exactly what goal was, or precisely how everything fits. It leaves the same kind of open spaces it always left, even at the very end, even when it would have been easy to close them. The difference is only that now, alongside the open spaces, there is a song. And the song does not fill the gaps so much as make them bearable. The show learned, over a decade, that you do not need every answer to be comforted, that the comfort and the mystery can coexist, that you can sing in the dark without first turning on all the lights. And so it ends exactly as it lived, withholding the explanations, and offering instead the connection, and trusting that the connection, in the end, was always the thing you actually came for. So that is the room. 14 small chambers of grief, walked through in the dark, from a green elephant chasing one perfect apple, to a whole world singing itself a lullaby at the end of time. And in every single one, the heartbreak came from the same place. Not from the sad thing happening, but from the comfort the show refused to give you in the moment it happened. The music it stripped out of the citadel, the explanation it withheld from the flower on Finn's stump, the held silence after tree trunks vanished, the truth that Simon could not hear in his own song, the answer it never gave Finn about which cat he saved, the judgment it would not pass on Lemonhope, the grief it would not even name for Stormo, the reunion it would not grant at the top of the tower, the mortality it took back from Marceline, the father who chose the comet. Every one of them is a door the show opened and then declined to walk you through, trusting you to find your own way across the gap. And notice the shape the night has had, because the order was never an accident. We began with the gentlest losses, a vanished elephant, a mute stranger, a child crying over fries, small aches that the show treated with the same seriousness it would later bring to the largest griefs. Then the losses deepened, a son frozen forever on a mountain, a choice no one would confirm, a building falling in the rain, a child sailing away from everyone who needed him. Then came the devastations, the man who forgot the girl he raised, the crown traded for a child's safety, the father who did not know his own son, the tower built toward an empty sky, the 1,000 years a woman tried and failed to put down. And only at the very end, after all of it, did the show begin to offer comfort. The father finally let go of, the immortal no longer alone, the whole world singing at the end of time. The crescendo was the argument. The show arranged its griefs from the smallest to the largest, and then, having taken you all the way down into the dark, walked you back up into the light, and the journey itself, the descent and the return, is the thing it was trying to say all along. That trust is the whole gift of this show, and it is why these episodes stay with people for years after they have forgotten the plots of 100 others. Adventure Time never told you how to feel. It gave you the image, held it a beat too long, and stepped out of the room. And in that empty space where the music should have been, you put yourself, your own losses, your own absent people, your own quiet rooms with the light left off. The show made space for your grief by refusing to fill the space with its own. That is the most generous thing a story can do, and it is the reason a children's cartoon about a boy and a dog became, for so many people, the place they go to feel the things they cannot say out loud. The withholding was never the absence of love, it was the form the love took. And if you have been listening to all of this in the dark, drifting in and out, you have already been doing exactly what these episodes ask of you. You have been filling the silences. Somewhere in the last 2 hours, one of these stories reached past the cartoon and touched something of your own. A person you lost. A love that changed. A goodbye you did not get to say properly. And the show did not put that feeling there. It only made room for it. That is the whole transaction. And it is the gentlest transaction in television. The show offers you a held silence, and you bring your own grief to fill it. And for a moment the two of you, the show and the listener, are doing the same quiet work, sitting together in a room, with the light left off, paying attention to something that is passing. There is no other show that asks so little and gives so much. That trusts the person half asleep on the other side of the screen to carry the deepest part of the meaning. It made you a partner in your own consolation, and it did it so gently you may not have noticed it was happening. And the comfort was always there, waiting at the end, the way the best comfort always has to be earned before it can be received. The show just made you sit in the dark long enough to deserve it, and then, at the very end, it sang. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next.